The title cards are one of the most underrated qualities of Adventure Time, and while some of them are just breathtakingly beautiful, a good amount of them have fun details or add to the plot of the episode, and one of my favorites has always been Another Way. The title card shows Finn and Jake seemingly mid-adventure as they're depicted jumping off a giant bird in a fantastic illustration that seems to be setting up an epic endeavor for the episode. And while this alone does make it a great one, what truly elevates it is the fact that the bird jumping scene before the episode isn't actually in the episode, as we actually open up to Finn and Jake nursing injuries that they received upon hitting the ground. But Another Way isn't just a great episode because it starts off with this uniquely terrific gag, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. In this video, we're going to go through all 11 minutes and discuss how it uses early show surrealist humor and visuals to portray Finn on a surprisingly melancholic journey to learn the importance of both making your own path and respecting the paths of others.
Well, now you know we can't jump off of birds.
The first scene in the episode, as I mentioned before, sees Finn and Jake nursing toe injuries that they got after jumping off birds, as the pair are subjected to Jake's ideal medical solution, farting clown nurses. Besides giving us a glimpse into what the show would have looked like if it did actually make its way on Nickelodeon, the scene also ties into the title of the episode pretty immediately, as Finn comments on wanting to heal his injury another way. One thing that I definitely thought this episode was going for is that Jake would reveal at some point that he wasn't actually injured, as you would imagine that his abilities would prevent any kind of fall damage, being the fact that he can turn into a paraglider or a parachute or get really small, or do pretty much a myriad of things to avoid hitting the ground hard, and that he's faking it just so that he can get the clown nurses that he likes. And while there definitely could be a hidden detail somewhere in this episode that insinuates that, I've watched through it 6 or 7 times for this video and have seen no such indication, but I think it's pretty likely that's the case anyway. Moving on the episode, the opening scene really commits to this horror clown scenario, as besides just playing this over-the-top circus music for way too long, we also get a beautifully uncomfortable scene with Finn being held down as the nurses kiss his foot, as we get the first of the surreal sequences in this episode, with Finn fleeing from giant versions of his caretakers against a background similar to the title card of No One Can Hear You. Luckily, we never quite reach the levels of that episode, as this scene is definitely the weirdest part of this one. Before this sequence is over though, the clown nurse tells Finn, "It's the only way," a phrase that's repeated multiple times in this episode, each time setting Finn off as he departs to show the world,
My way! Yeah!
Finn's journey to find the Cyclops and get his healing tears definitely feels very season 1, at least for a season 3 episode, in both concept and structure, with Finn facing 3 smaller challenges before reaching his goal. Up first, as Finn enters the forest, a talking stump gives him 2 pretty horrific options, either taking the eternal smelly path or the eternal hair fall out path, both of which being exactly what they sound like. Unfortunately for the stump, who is just one of the many fantastic characters in this forest, they accidentally utter the phrase "only way," which causes Finn to again go ballistic, breaking the stump and trudging through the bushes. On the other side, he finds a river accompanied by a talking bush who is hilarious from the first time he opens his mouth.
Hello, dummy police. Yes, there's a strange dummy lurking around my house.
Despite the fact that this episode is somewhat crunched for time with the amount of events that it wants to portray in 11 minutes, it makes sure to make this character as comedically annoying to Finn as possible, as he describes to him all the different reasons that the river is uncrossable, as the current is too fast, the water too acidic, and the eels too electric. The episode's efforts on this front are quickly explained, as the animation that depicts this bush being absolutely destroyed by Finn as he uses him to push away the water is pretty brutal. I do love this bit though, where the camera pans out and reveals that after all of that effort, the pair only made it slightly into the water before Finn once again freaks out at the phrase "only way" and just tanks it through the water to the other side. After this point, the episode is seemingly on a roll. The last 2 challenges Finn just faced were easy metaphors, as Finn faced 2 bad options and made his own path, and Finn found a path where there seemingly was not one, putting the episode on pace to look at the camera and tell the audience about the importance of making your own way in the world, and instead of watching this video, you'd be listening to me talk about astral plane or something. But as Finn approaches some creature of an unknown species and uses one of his melons to soothe his whole acidic water situation, you expect him to turn on Finn and scream about how his only option is bad or something. But instead, the guy who the model sheets call Pan seems relatively chill about Finn destroying one of his fruits, and simply asks Finn to grab the missing wheel from his wagon that has somehow ended up in a tree, as he just wants to bring his remaining melons home to his wife. It's a suspiciously sweet request that you expect to become sour as soon as Finn obliges, but he doesn't even let it get that far, as he screams about doing things his way, seemingly still on his thematic high, flinging the melons at Pan's wife in an attempt to get them to her even faster, but he instead gets to watch as she gets crushed in a scene that somewhat implies that she's become permanently disfigured by what just occurred. Finn, and by extension the episode, loses the energy he's gotten from proving all of these horrible figures wrong, and sinks further into a slump when Pan understandably refuses Finn's help at this point, as he's left with no way to fix his actions. Finn decides to deal with his sudden melancholic mood by singing a sudden melancholic song and the return of his ability to auto-tune his voice. And while yes, this song is partially meant to be a joke, I mean Finn sings a song that sounds like it's from Tomodachi Life, but it also feels immensely sincere. The lyrics of this one aren't going to blow your mind or anything, but there is kind of a beauty in the simplicity of the muses of a 13-year-old. After Finn concludes that he did indeed mess up, he spends most of the song asking how he did the wrong thing when he listened to his heart and made his own path. So much of Finn's character is based on him wanting to follow his hero instinct, but doing so this time has resulted in him harming the innocent. It feels like such a gut punch to both Finn and the show's themes, as it leaves the character utterly directionless. There are some other cool details starting this number too, like the trees reacting to his song and the pure variety of great shots that we get as a result of Finn letting his hair out, but the most notable visual element is the river in the distance during the song, which serves as pretty blatant symbolism for Finn's journey in the episode so far. The river starts as one stream before branching into 3 different paths, 2 of which being pretty smooth and 1 of which being rough, with the middle path pretty clearly indicating what Finn has chosen, as seen through this lyric in the song as it zooms in on the waterfall.
The melons rolled over that lady.
The most poignant part of the image, though, is something that Finn won't figure out until the end of the episode, as despite the waterfall, all 3 paths end up converging in the same place, but more on that towards the end of the video. As I mentioned before, Finn's Melancholy Hill ends up being the top of the Cyclops he was looking for, but in a very non-Finn behavior, he doesn't seem up for a fight, as he just wants to go back to the treehouse to admit defeat. The Cyclops doesn't take this well, yelling a phrase very familiar to Finn,
I will have it my way!
And delivering a fate that's also very familiar to Finn. After this bit of karmic justice for him, we get another callback to season 1 in the form of Finn hatching a plan, as he finds a way to get the tears of the Cyclops, ultimately healing himself before he decapitates the Cyclops and brings him to fix all the people that he's hurt before returning home. Back at the treehouse, we get one final thematic moment for the episode, as when Finn goes to offer Jake the tears, Jake declines in favor of his preferred horny clown nurse therapy. Now, whether or not you believe this is because Jake was never hurt in the first place and just wanted an excuse to laze around with Finn and hang out with the clown nurses, it's the ending of their exchange that I'm going to be talking about for a good chunk of the remainder of this video.
We all have our own ways. You know what? You're right.
Going back to the river symbolism from the song, in the shot you can see that all 3 paths, despite their differences, all start and end in the same way, mirroring what Finn learns at the end of the episode to the glee of Jake, who's always trying to teach Finn things about the world in the first couple of seasons. When Finn agrees with Jake at the end of the episode, he's admitting that there's sometimes many different right ways to do something getting the same result, and trying to push your way of doing things onto others is usually just going to make things worse. There's this dichotomy in Finn's character that flows through the entirety of Adventure Time, being that 1, his main character trait is wanting to follow his heart and make his own path to becoming a hero, and 2, that most of the personal problems in the show that he faces, such as his early encounters with Susan Strong, the surreal nightmare fuel of all the little people, and even arguably him losing Flame Princess in Frost and Fire, all of those come from him wanting others to also follow his path and do things his way. And obviously, as seen by the fact that most of these examples come after this episode, Finn doesn't exactly permanently learn this lesson by the end of season 3, otherwise there wouldn't be much of a show afterwards. But by the time the final season of the show comes around, he's significantly more keen in letting others come up with how they want to solve their problems and just helping them in that, instead of trying to commandeer everything himself. In that way, the double themes of the episode mirror each other in more ways than one. First, the episode starts by being about doing things your way, something that Finn doesn't exactly struggle with at any point in the series. However, once the song comes around and Finn temporarily disfigures a woman with fruit, the episode becomes slightly more complicated, as it turns into a warning about what can happen if you get too dead set on trying to do things exactly the way you want to, as you can ultimately hurt people. Just like many episodes in the first half of the series, this one is great on its own and would have been a good episode even if the show never made it to season 4, but it gets truly elevated when you have so many episodes afterwards that chronicle Finn going from 13 to 17, as the audience gets to watch him try and put into practice the things that he learns from his adventures, even if his growth isn't immediate. So while this episode certainly isn't the deepest one in the series, it's still worth diving into, as it makes those later episodes hit that much harder. Anyway, that's about it for me. If you have an idea for an episode of Adventure Time or any other cartoon you want to see me cover, leave it down in the comments, and if you want to see what I'm working on next, my Twitter is somewhere in the description. Either way, this has been AmpleSamuel, and I'll see you in hopefully about a week with a video that I haven't exactly picked out yet. Thanks for watching.